Hello and welcome to another build day of Project Blunicorn, the Ultima Evolution. My name is Humble, and behind me you can see kind of where we're at. Not too different on the outside. However, we have a few more parts here and there. Now we're getting into the more nitty-gritty stuff as we kind of come to the end of the project. I say the end because there's not a whole lot left to do. Let me show you what I got done yesterday. So we have now the center kind of dash binnacle mounted. This is just set in place for the moment, but you can see you've got a hole cut in the dash. This is just taped on for the moment so that I can set the height and make sure that it cleared the steering wheel okay and cleared everything else. As you can see, it's a very tight cockpit, and the reason I center mounted this display is because of the steering wheel with the buttons up here. I felt it intruded too much on the display itself, so I didn't want to have it sitting here, and I thought it might be too tight on the bottom to clear this top of the steering column. So I think the center mounted look looks really good. It just kind of keeps the symmetry in the cabin. Something else I've been toying with is there's this GPS antenna for this dash, and I thought about putting it on the back of the gauge binnacle or just behind it in the middle. The dash itself is going to be covered in Alcantara, and I'm not sure how to quite secure this. Maybe put a metal plate or something here on top of the fiberglass that this can stick to, because it is magnetic. But just something to keep it from moving around. But I'm also not too keen of having this kind of lump sit in the middle of the dash one way or the other. But I do want it to get a clean signal. So I'm still hurrying and humming about that. I did cut the hole in the dash for the steering column, but what I did was I just ran it through the steering column support on the back side. Just ran a Sharpie through this way and then made a circle through that mount to mark the back side of the dash. And then when I popped the whole dash up, I was able to mark out the center of that hole and then take a not a hole saw, but a stepped drill bit, which I don't have handy, but like a Christmas tree bit or a step drill bit, and widened out the hole just enough that it clears the column here. I may take it out another notch just to make sure that we don't have any rubbing issues once I get the Alcantara on the dash, but kind of see it's pretty tight in there, but it does not rub currently, and I'm happy with that fitment. Don't worry too much about these long bolts. I just got the wrong size, and I'll trim these up, and then Sean is nice enough to 3D print me a cover that'll go over this to make it look a little nicer. Both seats are in and mounted. The mount and the rib nuts for the shifter are in. It's just not bolted in at the moment because I needed to crawl under the dash, which, by the way, is a hell of a feat. I did get the oil tank mounted. One of the things I found in mounting the oil tank is this plate here comes pre-drilled, which you can sort of see that hole there. So this top hole, and there was no holes drilled in the bottom mount, and the instructions that I have in the build manual and the hole placement on this plate were conflicted. So it said that the edge of this plate on this bottom tube should be, I believe it said 250 millimeters from this back wall. But what I found was is that put the whole plate forward too far, and then this gap was too tight, and the oil tank would rattle against the back of the firewall. So what I ended up having to do is to move this plate back towards the back of the car. I would say maybe another 15-20 millimeter. I just kind of eyeballed it to make sure that there was no way that the tank could touch the firewall back here, and that I had enough room at the top. And then I set this distance first, which is the bottom hole, by sliding the whole plate diagonally on this bar. And then once the top cleared, I did just this bottom corner first to set the distance from the firewall, and then I spotted this upper row here, and just chose not to use these pre-drilled holes because they no longer lined up. And I was worried that if I moved the whole plate this way towards the back of the car, then it would start to interfere with the motor. It would put the oil tank closer to the exhaust. And I've mentioned it time and time again, the issues and concerns with heat management in this car with everything being so tight. So heat management is a real concern, so I wanted to keep that away from the exhaust manifold as much as possible. And I still will probably protect the tank with either some of this gold foil or the silver-backed fiberglass matting that you see. I'll use it on the engine lid and a couple areas where keeping heat away from the components is super vital. Down here, this is our air-to-water cooler. This is a longer setup, and again, I'm worried about kind of fitment for this because if I mount it down here, so there's two concerns. There's one, water pipe routing, and two, oil pipe routing. So water coming back from the radiator comes through this pipe. I don't know if this is where it's going to live, but it would be, I was thinking about somewhere in this area. However, I don't know if there will be enough clearance for the engine, the front of the engine. So that's a worry. Plus, down here where my pinky is, enough space for a 90-degree fitting for the oil feed line. And then the oil exit will come out of this guy. And I believe it goes back into the motor from here, or it comes out from here to the tank. I have to verify my plumbing. But at any rate, I need to make sure that there's enough room for a 90-degree fitting on the bottom of the cooler, and enough room to route plumbing and all that. So things will get very tight in here. On following this line here is our heater hoses, which will mount up there. None of the fuel lines have been run yet. Only one of our AC lines, which is this guy, has been run. So there's still quite a bit left to do back in the engine bay, engine notwithstanding. So I think what I might try to do today is get that engine off of its crate and set it in place in the back of the car to answer some of my clearance questions and help answer both some wiring questions and plumbing questions. Here in the car, also working on the interior bits. So we have the center tub mounted temporarily, and now that I have a flashlight, I can sort of shine inside here, and you can see down in the back there, and the back side is where all of the switch gear, as you can see there, will go. And on the front side, I've marked out a line here, which is 2 inches down from this upper lip, which isn't, this lip isn't perfectly flat with the ground. It raises up on this edge a little bit, but I wanted the buttons to follow this contour since that's where your eyes are going to follow. So I've marked this 2-inch line all the way across. The gauge cluster is mounted. However, I think I'm going to recess it back until you can see this carbon fiber binnacle until this split is even with the dash. I think I'm going to push the whole thing back an inch and mount it in the dash. I think it'll just look a little cleaner that way versus sticking out like it does there. It should also clear up this area maybe a little bit, kind of reduce the shadow it gives. But I'm going to mount our switch gear here on this line, which I still need to mark out, and then a start button here behind the wheel. If I get the there we go. Okay, so the camera's about where your head is going to sit, and the switch gear will go here. I think the start button will end up back here behind the steering wheel. I have a couple of warning lights which will need to go right here that I can easily see through the wheel, but the buttons here won't interfere with. And then down in this area I have this vent, and I want it to be kind of down here, which I think will give enough room for the tubing that and then the vent itself will actually be usable by the passengers, and then likewise the vent will sit over here on that side. And then all the way down in here there's this little kind of nook where this area is open to the interior, and the top of the luggage bin is actually your armrest, and so the key on and the mirror controls will be here, kind of tucked down and out of the way, which is easily reachable, and it won't interfere with anything. Alright, I've done some marking. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but these little crosshairs are going to mark the center for each hole for the 5 switches over here. I've marked the center line for the steering column, and there is a kind of a longer warning bar that will sit here, and then a couple smaller warning lights for the canopy, which will sit just under it. And I don't know how well this is going to show up, but inside of here you can see some of the wiring mess that sits behind the dash, and a little bit of room behind the dash itself. And what I want to do is I want to take the start button here, and then there's another warning light for the fan, and I want to put them right here underneath the actual display. And I think I might have enough room to squeeze them in here and clear the roll cage and the wiring and the HVAC. It's just a very busy area right here in the middle. So I think I can make that fit, but now we're going to pull off the center tub, pull it back off, square away the wiring, and hopefully ready all of this for final assembly.